I'm Chris Carter. This is the Locked On Steelers podcast. Tonight, the Steelers take on the Giants. But before we get into that, I want to dip into this conversation about the wide receiver market and why Omar Khan hasn't taken a bite out of it yet to help the Steelers wide receiver room out. We'll discuss that and hear more on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. Steelers fans, hope you had a good weekend. We're going to get into some of the action that happened over the weekend in the AFC North. Interesting results there that I think really broke in the favor of the Steelers. But before we get to that, let's focus on the Steelers themselves. First of all, let's do some injury updating notes. Cordero Patterson, who we thought was going to be back for this game, is actually out for this game, which is an unfortunate blow to the running back room. But Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, still a dangerous 1-2 punch. That should be a different fact. But good news for the Steelers is that Donte Jackson is back, and I think that that's going to be really good for what they want to do to Daniel Jones. It'll help them keep the full structure of what they want to do in the secondary and disguise thing. Donte Jackson's also been really good in helping with turnovers. We'll get to more into how that plays into things when I get to the final keys heading into the game later. But I want to lead off this show and focus on early talking about the Steelers' need at wide receiver that we've talked about really since they traded away Deontay Johnson at the wide receiver thing. We've previewed this game a lot, so let's take a look at that. Now, the NFL trade deadline is 8 days away, November 5th. It's right around the corner. It's next Tuesday, and the Steelers still could trade for a wide receiver to add to the room, which has been a major topic ever since they traded away Deontay Johnson in March, and reasonably so, because wide receiver is obviously one of the less equipped units on a team that's pretty much otherwise pretty balanced. But does that mean that the Steelers must stop at nothing to trade for a wide receiver right now, and that it erases kind of what Omar Khan's done to help fix the Steelers roster? Some say that Khan's legacy kind of rides on this situation because they really want the Steelers to get a wide receiver, and that they don't want to hear about how great a GM he's been or the con man jokes or Omar's coming jokes and all these things if he doesn't pull this off. But my question is, why? Why is it that deep? I think Omar Khan deserves a lot of credit for what he's done to help fix the Steelers roster and get them to the point where they're 5-2, getting ready to host a not playing well Giants team for a chance to go 6-2 at home before their bye week. And all while the quarterback that they brought in to start most of the season has only played one game. If the Steelers don't do this move, does it erase Omar Khan, what he's done, and by flipping Chase Claypool for Joey Porter Jr., which still is a completely insane result that I still don't know how they actually pulled that off. Does it erase how in less than 2 years he's turned weaknesses at offensive line, linebacker, defensive line, cornerback, and yes, quarterback as well with the moves that they made this offseason into strengths or at least non-liabilities on this roster? Let's be real about this. Yeah, sure, wide receivers hurting, but and a lot of people would say, oh, why they trade away Deontay Johnson? Well, they got Donte Jackson, and he has 3 interceptions already, and he's been playing pretty well for the Steelers. Meanwhile, Deontay Johnson is not playing well for the Carolina Panthers. And sure, you could say wide receiver is the one thing they didn't address, but I think it would be a mistake to overlook the additions they've made on the offensive line, which is, by the way, decimated with injuries, but they're still performing well. He's made the tight end room strong. He's made the linebacker room really strong. Defensive line is solidified. They've got depth as well. Cornerbacks, not a weakness. He's solidified a lot of things. And again, they completely flip this wide receiver room upside down, and they were able to make it wide receiver room, quarterback room upside down. And now it's to the point where people are arguing about, wait a minute, you like this quarterback who's leading a 30-point victory or that quarterback who's leading a 30-point victory. So yeah, sure, they missed. They're not they don't have the full gamut of options in one part of the team, but that's part of when you're rebuilding teams or even just straight up building teams. There's going to be natural weaknesses in rosters, and for the Steelers, wide receiver is just that weakness that year. Now they could probably go after a guy in the draft this year that'll go get this, but again, obviously, all the work that Omar Khan has done and the front office has done to kind of re-solidify things and keep the Steelers, get them on the right track moving forward is not erased. But some people are accusing the Steelers of missing out on wide receivers in the trade market because of wide receivers they haven't traded for, and that it's the front office's malpractice that they've done so, and it's terrible. And Steelers fans, I think that we got to pay attention. If you want to look at what's happening here, I don't think it's malpractice, because as they're saying that, and people say that, and you're thinking, well, they haven't traded for a wide receiver, so obviously, yeah, it is, but this person has a point. And I'm like, yeah, let's look at who are the wide receivers they've quote unquote whiffed on. Let's take a look at that real quick. I created a list here. I even included some people that I completely forgot were even traded because of reasons. First, let's go way back to the start of the season. Jahan Dotson, a first round pick recently for the Washington Commanders, was put in the trade market. He went for a third round pick. So why didn't the Steelers go get him? Well, since he joined the Eagles. Oh, by the way, have been dealing with injuries at wide receiver this season. He has 13 targets, 6 receptions, and 35 yards in 6 games. So no big deal there. That's not exactly turning the page for the Steelers wide receiver room. You could probably match that with anyone there. So, okay, no big deal. But what about the big one? The big one that everyone was talking about all offseason, all summer, all training camp. We kept joking about it. I kept posting Mr. Crab memes about it. Brandon Aiyuk. Supposedly wanted a first-round pick for him, or at best a second-round pick and some change for him. Well, Brandon Aiyuk for the 49ers, 47 targets, 25 receptions, 374 yards, 0 touchdowns. Van Jefferson has more touchdowns than him. Oh, and by the way, he's on injured reserve for the season. Also, the 49ers, they are 3-4 headed into Sunday Night Football, though as I'm recording this, Sunday Night Football is playing. They might be 4-4. Either way, Steelers doing better than that team right now, and Brandon Aiyuk's not going to be a factor for them this year and wasn't too big of a factor for them there. So, did the Steelers really miss out on that situation there for this season? I don't know. Because right now their offense is doing all right, their team's doing all right, and if you had traded away draft picks for him and significant salary capital, that could be more costly than helpful there. But let's look at another guy, Brandon Aiyuk out the way. Let's look at Davante Adams. He's an All-Pro, and he was right there for the taking. He was traded for, so you could say that Omar Khan should have gotten it. Well, He played 2 games, and in 2 games, he has 15 targets, 7 receptions, 84 yards, 0 touchdowns. And the Jets are 0-2 since trading for him, including a whooping that they took at the hands of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So should they have given up a whole lot for him? Also, Davante Adams most likely wanted to play with Aaron Rodgers, not with Russell Wilson, a.k.a. not a.k.a., but also Justin Fields, whoever the Steelers were starting. So did the Steelers really miss out there? I don't know. Cooper Kupp. Turns out Cooper Kupp wasn't actually ever going anywhere. The Rams were exploring options in case they didn't like what they saw on Thursday Night Football. He plays really well. He's not going out, so he can't be traded. If you're talking about Amari Cooper, as we said a million times, the Browns were never going to trade Amari Cooper to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It just wasn't going to happen. The one player who I think maybe you could say the Steelers could have acted on is DeAndre Hopkins, who went from the Titans to the Chiefs. The Chiefs did win their game yesterday, edging out the Raiders by 7 points. But that's a 32-year-old guy on a one-year rental contract with injury concerns to his knee. He had 2 catches for 29 yards in the last game. I'm not as that. So all these names about the Steelers missing out on, who was the big one that was going to revolutionize this offense and change everything and make it so that this offense had 2 really good wide receivers that was going to light up the scoreboards for the Steelers? I don't think there has been one. And frankly, I don't think there is one available right now. Everyone wants to say Mike Williams. I don't think they should be giving up much for Mike Williams. At best, a 6th or 7th, something low. I'm all for exploring the ideas of guys. Now, like if Jacoby Myers from the Raiders is available for like a 4th, I get that. I get the idea of that and the allure of that. But you shouldn't give up an arm and a leg for it, and you also should not give up good draft picks right now. I don't get why so many people right now are so willing to just throw away draft picks from Omar Khan and say, Omar Khan, just give up the draft picks and get the players because it's fun. You can do it all the time, and it just looks cool in the moment. You can say you added to it. But Omar Khan's first 2 drafts have looked really good. And we talk about every time that there's a trade come, give up a 2nd-round pick, give up a 3rd-round pick, give up a 4th-round pick. Let's look at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th-round picks in Omar Khan's first 2 drafts, all right? Joey Porter Jr., check, doing really well. Keanu Benton, check, doing really well. Darnell Washington, a late 3rd, playing pretty well for a late 3rd, and I think could be unlocked even more in what they're trying to do on offense. So check there as well. Nick Herbig, 4th round pick. I don't think we got to explain it. Nick Herbig's been playing really well. He's injured right now, but that guy looks like he could be a starter sooner rather than later, and he's a heck of a backup. Double check. Zach Frazier, hurt right now, but playing phenomenally at center as a rookie. Check. Peyton Wilson, growing with every single game, looking like he could be the truth at linebacker. Check. Mason McCormick, a 4th round pick. He's starting his 5th game this weekend, and he's looked good, and he's getting better, and he's starting at right guard, and there's games where I forget James Daniels isn't on the lineup, which was one of the few guys who were paying a whole lot of money to on the offense. So check there. And then you have Roman Wilson, who's injured and not playing. So out of 8 picks in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds over the past 2 seasons, the only 2 seasons, Omar Khan has had draft picks. 7 of those 8 are legitimately performing well. So why would you want to throw those picks away? And these are guys that can help you, that are helping you right now and are under rookie deal control for the next 4 years for guys, like for rental players who you're not sure if they're going to fit. And by the way, again, every player that I named there outside of Roman Wilson has started this season and is playing well. 7 of them are playing well to outstanding. These are players that are going to be under your control contractually and not cost you a whole lot, but to 2026 and 2027. Why would you throw those picks away? And yes, getting a talented player right now can really help with the potential short-term window, but these players are helping the short-term window and they're helping the long-term window. And if these are the guys that you get now, imagine what they're going to be able to get next year. They might be able to get the wide receiver that you want, but without having to give up big money for it. And it could be a player that you develop. You know, for example, people want another player people want the Steelers to trade for right now is Jordan Addison. And listen, I covered Jordan Addison. I think he's a phenomenal playmaker that could be unlocked and really used. And I think if the Steelers could get him, I think talent-wise, he'd be a great fit. But I have this question about Jordan Addison. He's Instagramming pictures of him saying free 3, while the Vikings are what, like 5-2, and they lose 2 games, and he wants to get up out. I don't know. That's not a great sign. And I think the Steelers want to avoid drama right now. And again, maybe there's some context there that we're missing. But you know, again, I just don't think that it's necessary for the Steelers to just say, "Hey, yeah, screw draft picks, throw it all away, go get a wide receiver." I don't think that's the right move right now. There's a much better chance at building your getting a long-term player who helps you in your Steelers draft process. Which right now with this front office looks like it's been pretty solid in getting players who can help now and who are going to contribute to the long term. So if Omar Khan doesn't make a trade, I don't think that you Steelers fans should be going crazy. It's not the end of the world. Could he? I think if they should keep exploring options, like I think they are. They're making phone calls, they're kicking tires, they're doing physicals, they're checking up on guys. And if the appropriate time comes, sure, take the shot if it's the right kind of shot, if they feel it's the right value. But despite whatever anyone tells you, from Adam Schefter to Ian Rappaport to Jordan Schultz, or even Lil O'Meal on the Locked On Steelers podcast about who is available and and what teams want to trade and who wants to go where, you don't know and we don't know exactly what's happening behind the scenes all the time. And there's conversations and things that are happening that are real opportunities and not real opportunities. And there's so many factors that play into what happens that we hear rumors about but never can really confirm, that I think sometimes you just got to accept, like, hey, the front office, was dealing with this situation and this was the result. Maybe there was an opportunity there, maybe there wasn't. But bottom line, I think this front office has shown, with the way that they're fixing the offensive line, the way they fixed linebacker, cornerback, D line, they're finding new places there. The way the offense looks, the way the quarterback room looks right now, I think they have earned the space to be given trust that they could figure this out, and that if they're not making a trade for wide receiver, maybe the right move for the wide receiver trade just isn't there to be made. And it's just and they're exhibiting patience until they can make the right move, whether that's drafting a player next year, trading for a player at the deadline, or something else. But again, I think the Steelers front office should have earned a little bit of trust under Omar Khan to be able to make this call for themselves and to be trusted. Hey, they're doing their best to rebuild this roster and to make it a competitive roster, which, by the way, it is right now at 5-2, and not technically directly, they're in first place in the AFC North, which I think is wide open. We'll talk about that, the AFC North, and the results that happened this weekend next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who are actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. You're not playing against thousands of other players. You're not playing against sharks and people that know the exact right lineups to win the contest. It's just you versus the numbers. You just pick 2 to 6 players and you guess more or less on the stat projection that Prize Picks give you. If you get right on your picks, you win. Prize Picks is the fun new daily fantasy game that everyone needs to start playing right now, and it's the only real money daily fantasy platform that gives you an injury insurance policy. For example, if your lineup's in play and you have a player that leaves the first half for injury and doesn't come back in the second, your lineup stays intact. Prize Picks keeps that lineup alive, saving you from losing it just because someone got injured. And now, on Prize Picks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as making 4 correct picks. Prize Picks includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, and so much more. Download the Prize Picks app today or go to the website prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's code LockedOnNFL to receive a $50 bonus for just playing $5. Prize Picks. Run your game. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We dip back into the show here. I know that was a longer segment by me. I had a lot of points to get out about this whole wide receiver trade thing. But let's talk about what's happened in the AFC North this weekend and why the division, I believe, is wide open and the Steelers could be in a really good position to attack it. But let's start with what happened on Sunday. The Ravens went to Cleveland to visit the Browns, who were starting Jameis Winston, and I have to say I was shocked by this. The Browns won 29-24. And look, division games are always pretty crazy and nuts, and you can never predict them all the time. But if you watch that game and how the Ravens lost this game, they dropped at least 5 interceptions that Jameis Winston that threw right to them, including right before the game-winning touchdown pass Winston threw at the end of the game. He threw it right to Kyle Hamilton. There's the star safety, maybe the best secondary player on the Ravens roster, and he threw it right to his hands, and he just dropped it. And the next play got beat for a touchdown. Just a really rough sequence there for the Ravens. And now all of a sudden the Ravens are at 5-3. The Steelers stay at 5-2. If the Steelers win, they will have sole possession of the AFC North going into their bye week. And even if the Ravens were to win during their bye week, they would hold on to it because they'd be up a half game. So good stuff there for the Steelers. The Browns still at 2-6. They were able to get a win, but I don't think that this was an awakening for the Browns. I think they were very fortunate that the Ravens dropped that many interceptions, and I also think that them playing at home, they might have been a little juiced up for their first game post Deshaun Watson. I still think the Browns, as I picked at the beginning of the season, are going to finish in last in the division. But they weren't the only AFC North teams to play this weekend. Of course, there was the Cincinnati Bengals, and I was a little back and forth on this game. I wasn't sure how it would go. I did pick the Eagles, and I was right. They demolished them 37-17. And it came out, and this is something interesting. I'm noticing that the Bengals are coming out really red hot a lot in a lot of games. You see Joe Burrow throw early touchdown passes, and then after those like first or second drives, the Bengals seem to cool off a lot. I don't know if that's because teams figure them out real quick, or they're really good at scripting plays early on, but then as they're feeling things out, things aren't happening. But the Bengals came out, scored a first quarter touchdown, Jamar Chase, and then the Eagles just dominated the rest of the way. Jalen Hurts scoring 3 touchdowns, rushing for 3 touchdowns, throwing another touchdown. Saquon Barkley getting 108 yards. The Bengals now 3-5 with this loss. The Eagles ran all over them. I think that's I think that's not a good sign for their upcoming matchup with the Steelers in later that coming up this year. If the Steelers are able to keep running the ball and keep improving on how they run the ball, that could be the big thing that breaks open games when they're playing against the Bengals later. So with all that, let's take a step back. We look at the results. The Steelers are in first place in the AFC North. They're sitting at 5-2. The Ravens at 5-3. The Bengals at 3-5. The Browns at 2-6. So if the Steelers can beat the Giants this week, they would be a game up on the Ravens. They would be 3 games up on the Bengals, 4 games up on the Browns, and they've played none of these division opponents yet. And I think you could maybe argue if the Steelers do win again, they got to win tonight. If they lose to the Giants, it'll change a lot of the tones. They'll still be atop the division with record wise, but they'll have missed another opportunity to kind of gain some distance there. But even if they do lose this game, I think you can argue they're playing the best in the division. I mean, the Ravens have had the more impressive, I think, one win in their beatdown of the Buffalo Bills, who do look exciting right now. And the Ravens have had some other impressive wins. I mean, the shootout with the Bengals, they were able to eke out the Commanders. They were able to beat the Buccaneers pretty soundly last week. But they've also had some tough losses. Their loss to the Raiders at home, though, mind you, wasn't really good. This loss to the Browns was a really bad one, and they got to bounce back next week against the Broncos, who I think are a little bit better than I give them credit for. I thought the Broncos were going to be a team that was going to be battling for the top pick, but here they are at 5-3, right with the Ravens there. So that's a little tougher than I thought they would get. But I look at this second half of the schedule for the Steelers, and I said this earlier in this, like maybe a couple weeks ago when we looked at how bad the Browns and Bengals started this season, but this second half of the season does not look nearly as daunting as people made it out to be. You come out of this bye week. Let's say the Steelers win the Giants, and I'm not overlooking the Giants. I'm just saying, hey, they're favored to win. Let's say they win, or let's say whatever, 5-6 wins. Either way, they go into week 10 in Washington against the Commander. Jaden Daniels looks like a monster. He looks like he's really developing, but he's also a rookie quarterback. Needed a Hail Mary to beat the Bears. They did not play a really good game in this game. If the Steelers could come out of their bye week, win on the road against Washington, that could be a great tone setter, and there's a chance that could take them up to a 7-2 record, which would put them in a really good spot heading into division play. Because then after that, it's pretty much all AFC North. Then you come back home, you play the Ravens, you're at the Browns, at the Bengals, and then back home against the Browns. But you look at this and the way that these teams are playing, we know the Steelers play all these teams tough, especially the Ravens, who they're 7-1 against in the last 4 years. Even when Lamar Jackson plays, they are very good when they play that team. The only time that they've lost in the past 4 years is when Mitch Trubisky's had to come in at Acrisure Stadium. And I think this time around, if Russell Wilson was the starter and he were to get hurt, Justin Fields, he has shown, he can keep the Steelers offense going. The way I look at it, if the Steelers handle their business against the Giants, they're 6-2. You're looking at this second half stretch of the season here where they have all 6 of their division games, and then they have 3 non-divisional games against the Commanders, the Eagles, and the Ravens. So 9 games there. You're looking at a potential that if you can win 6 out of those 9 games, and against a division that isn't as nasty as it looked right before. The Browns, I know that they got the dub this past weekend. I'm not sold on Jameis Winston figuring this out long term. I think that's going to blow up in its face sooner or later. The Bengals, their defense looks very suspect. If they can win 4 out of their 6 division games, that means all they'd have to do is win 2 out of 3 against the Commanders, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs are undefeated, but man, if you watch their games, they are not indestructible. I think that is a team that the way the Steelers play, those teams could make that a really close game, and the Steelers could win that game in that situation. Philadelphia, the Eagles, they are up 1 week, down the next. They've had some really perplexing games where they've lost or they've come real close, and that I thought they should have looked better in. They have a lot of potential. I will say the biggest thing about that game is just, in my experience, whatever it is, the Steelers do not play well in Philadelphia. They haven't won there since the 60s. It's just like a curse that's been going on. I don't know what's going on there. But again, you take 2 out of 3 of those games and you win 4 games in division, that gets you 6 wins in the second half of the season. And if they beat the Giants tonight, That's a 12-win football team. That's 12-5. And that's not guaranteed to win the division, but I think with the way the division is playing out right now, and you look at the Ravens, they got 5 wins. You know, they got to play the Steelers twice. They have to play the Eagles. They have to play the Texans. That's not a guaranteed one. They still have to play the Chargers in Los Angeles. Justin Herbert just had a really good game. There's a space for the Steelers to win this division. And if you guys watched me in the AFC North preview at the start of the season, I said I think the Steelers are going to finish in second this year. I think the Ravens are the team we're going to win. But I also thought that Lamar Jackson and this offense was going to take over more games and win more games and not lose games to teams like the Raiders and the Browns this year. And you know, maybe they'll bounce back, maybe they'll figure it out. But they've left the door open for the Steelers, and there's still plenty of football to be played. You know, we don't know who will be in the pole position towards the end to be the team that either holds on to the lead or could choke it away. But I think the Steelers have put themselves in a position with their first 7 games to say, hey, we are legitimately one of the best, if not the best, AFC North team in this division. And if people keep sleeping on them, they should do so at their own peril, because the Steelers are playing pretty consistent football the last couple of weeks. If they play well again tonight, there's a chance. I looked this up. If the Steelers can find a way to beat the Giants by 19 or more points tonight, because they beat the Raiders by 19. They beat the Jets, I think, by 22. If they were able to beat them by 19 points, not guaranteeing that they will, but it would be like the first time since 2007 that they would have beaten 3 opponents in a row by 19 or more points. And it would only be the 4th time since Chuck Noll took over that they've done it. They did it twice in the 76 season. They didn't do it again at any point in the Noll era or in the Cowher era. It took until Tomlin, until 2007, when they blew out 3 straight opponents back then to do that. But again, I really think this comes down to the Steelers showing, hey, they can be consistent on defense, not sustain major injuries. And if Russell Wilson unlocks this balanced attack on offense, that will be a factor into getting this win, going into the second half of the season strong. And it could be about the Steelers. It could be simply about the Steelers. Can you do your job? Can you play your best football? Because if the Steelers, as they're constructed right now, play their best football, I actually think they're much better in the AFC than people gave them credit for. And they may be one of the top 3 teams in the conference. But they got a lot to prove before to get there, and that includes beating the Giants. I wanted to focus one last time on this game tonight here on Monday Night Football, which I will be at Acrisure Stadium. Let me know if you're going. Shout out to people who have already hit me up. I will try to link up with you beforehand. If I can't, I apologize. Busy times as always. I also got to be at Pitt Football earlier in the day talking to Pat Narduzzi. But all that being said, we'll get into that Giants matchup in a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you, this show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the place you need to go to get all your tickets for all your favorite events. It's fall, and that means there's plenty to do in Pittsburgh, and there's no better place to find tickets to all your favorite live events than Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff so they only show you incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Right now, you can get tickets to anything, including tonight's Steelers game. Go in, check out Game Time, find your favorite seats, find great deals, and you can sit in your favorite spot in Acrisure Stadium and enjoy Monday Night Football. Steelers, I'll tell you what, I covered that Sunday Night Football game against the Jets. It was a crazy environment. It was a special place to be. The nighttime Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh when the Steelers are playing well is something to behold. To get to live through a Renegade, get all that experience by getting your tickets on Game Time. Plus, Game Time has the best price guarantee, where they promise you that they will always use the best price. If you find tickets in the same section in a row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference of those prices. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, or go to their website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here as CeeDee Lamb just scored another touchdown. The Cowboys are making it close here sometimes, and that's how this, when I'm recording this show. Also, if you didn't get a chance, check me out. I was on the Final Word, Channel 11 WPXI. You can go to WPXI.com to see our conversations there. I did that with Alan Saunders and Doug Whaley, two guests we have on this show. Great people there. Great conversations also with Jenna Harna, of course. Amazing show that was. But let's get into this upcoming matchup with the Giants. I really think that Donte Jackson being back for the Steelers is a lot more than people realize right now. I think a lot of people are like, oh, Donte Jackson play, that's cool. I think that Donte Jackson, his knowledge, his understanding, something that Patrick Queen that we played on this show was a clip that he said to me where he talked about, hey, one of the biggest assets to the defense and doing the right things is they have a lot of guys who watch film, understand film, and can communicate easily. And Donte Jackson was one of the people that he brought up because Donte Jackson, Patrick Queen himself, TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, even Joey Porter Jr., young guys like him, they're able to talk so much, and it allows them to set up the complex zone schemes and the switches of from man to zone and zone to man, and when they're blitzing and what they're disguising. It allows them to get more intricate with what they're trying to do there. And against a quarterback like Daniel Jones, it could be those type of things that force quarterbacks. He's not young anymore. It's kind of crazy to say that. It feels like he should be a second or third year player, but he's not. That's when you force quarterbacks that struggle to read the field into making mistakes, especially if your offense is able to put points on the board and you put the onus on the other team's offense. Hey, you got to move the ball. You got to be aggressive. You got to take shots. And if you're able to anticipate where those shots are going, you can make big plays. And this could be a game to break open and get turnovers because the Giants have not been a team that has shown, pretty strong quarterback play. When you look at how they've played this season, they're 2-5 for a reason. A lot of people are questioning Daniel Jones and what he's been able to do. Right now they are giving up, I think the third most. They're throwing the third most interceptions, or no, excuse me, not third most interceptions. They're getting the third most interceptions, or third fewest interceptions on defense. I apologize, but they're not really strong right now. They've thrown 4 interceptions, only 6 touchdowns. You can take advantage of that, especially if you take away the run, which hasn't been too great. They ranked 28th in touchdowns, 27th in yards per attempt. You take away that run, you force Daniel Jones to have to beat you with his arm. You'll get more of those mistakes, and that's where Donte Jackson being healthy gives them another vet that allows them to get into those rotations. James Pierre, he's a guy who knows the Steelers system and he can be there, but he's not a guy that you want, lining up against starting wide receivers, play in and play out. That's why he was on a practice squad. But Donte Jackson being back, I think gives them their full gamut there. This defense needs to have another one of their elite games to set the tone and not let the big plays come up. But on the flip side, this is a chance for Russell Wilson to show last week wasn't a fluke, that he does still have it. He's not washed. He can get the ball around and distribute the football to the right people at the right times. Read what the Giants defense is doing. Giants defense hasn't been terrible this year, especially with Dexter Lawrence in the middle. He has been a problem for teams. We talked about that last Thursday and Friday in the previews for this game. He's going to be a problem. Neutralize him, make him not a huge factor, help Ryan McCollum out, get Najee Harris going, hit some deep shots in this game, and let this team show, hey, this team isn't based on needing a superstar to take over on offense. This team is based on there's a system that forces you to honor several different things, and you can't honor all of them all the time unless you're truly an elite defense, and the Giants are not an elite defense. If Russell Wilson comes out, reads what's going on, calls the right adjustments at the line, and the Steelers are able to work around Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, I think that they'll be in a really good place. So my top keys going into this game, Russell Wilson, keep the offense on schedule. Doesn't have to be another 37-point performance, but if they're able to move the ball consistently, win on third downs enough, keep the defense from having to be on the field 70, 80 plays in this game, and finish drives with touchdowns, you're going to force the Giants' hand. You'll probably put them in positions for the Steelers to get some more turnovers, and then the Steelers can be that difference-making team that you want them to be with their defense, with TJ Watt getting in the turnover game, and of course the secondary also getting their fair of interceptions. Who knows? Maybe this is the week Minkah Fitzpatrick gets his first pick in a while. But that's the thing to me. Let the offense go to work. Let them be the unit that gets that shows they're still a balanced unit. And even though people are going to say, hey, it's the Giants, who cares? It will still be, if you put up, let's say they put up another 30 points, it'll still be 3 straight 30-point performances, which is pretty insane considering where everyone thought this offense would be this year. And even if you score 24, 27 points in this game, and it's more of a slow-paced game that you kind of just wore them down on, you're going to show that you're a balanced offense, that you could do it consistently, even against not good teams. And if you're able to do that, that's a big step up of where they've been the last 3-4 years. And that's something that we've been saying, hey, all they need to do is be middle of the road in offense, great in defense, and that makes you a legitimate AFC contender. So if they do that tonight, I think they'll get the win, and they'll set a really good tone going into the bye week. And then maybe, who knows, during the bye week, maybe they'll get back Zach Frazier. Maybe they'll get back Nick Herbig. Maybe Dante Jackson will be fully healthy. Maybe Cordero Patterson will be back. And maybe this team will be healthy enough to go on a serious run and be ready for that AFC North gauntlet later in the year. But it all starts tonight on Monday Night Football at Acrisure Stadium. I'll be there, Chris Carter, here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thanks again for tuning in to the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Carter Critiques. I work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here in the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. See you, really later tonight from Acrisure Stadium, while I'll deliver my quick short that I do on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram and TikTok whenever I do my post-game quick analysis. And then, of course, we'll have our late show after the game's over, as soon as I can, when I get back after the game with my clips from the locker room. We'll see you then here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.